Maybe. And we are live. Welcome, everyone. As you'll see, there are not nearly as many people here as you probably were expecting. First off, I will tell you Will will not be able to make it tonight. His Mongolian throat course that he took on Tuesday, well, that was actually a 3-day, 2-night romantic getaway with him and his wife to learn romantic throat singing, and he was a little too enthusiastic, so he will not make it tonight. And if you believe anything about that, you are really gullible. We have the one and only Dave Dobson, who wins or comes close to winning every competition he enters.
Oh, that's not even close to true. But
and we have Laura Huey, who is coming but is currently delayed. And finally, we have James Maxey, who is at the mercy of Microsoft Windows because he had to reboot his computer 5 minutes before the show started. So, Dave, how are you doing today, and what wisdom do you have to dispense?
Oh, we're dispensing wisdom already. I thought there would be a warm-up period. I'm doing fine. I am in the midst of all kinds of stuff going on in terms of life. I thought when I quit teaching and started writing full-time that my life would get simpler, but that hasn't been true this month. But yeah, let's see, wisdom. Write every day, wear clean underwear. We could talk about book marketing.
There's James.
Oh, there's James.
So I am using my phone instead of my computer, and so I'm going to be sorry because I'm not the camera in my phone in my hand. So
Do you have
maybe a little jumpy? I also don't have a microphone headset for it.
okay. Do you have your computer on as well? Because we're getting an echo from you.
Well, that's because I don't have my headphones. So, hold on a second. I think my computer's coming up. I'm going to log off here.
It's probably good because you sound like you're at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. So, let's see. So you recently won Space Bow.
Yeah, that was really great and a big surprise.
And you were a semifinalist in Spiffbo 10 Spiff Box.
Yeah, are you still going in there? I wasn't. I haven't seen how you did.
I did not get into Spiff Box. I didn't have anything to submit, but I'm in Space.
Oh, you're in Space Bow, right? Yeah, and SPSFC is the official name for people.
I have heard absolutely nothing.
Okay.
It's all crickets, so no news is good news, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I am judging this year for that. I'm in on the Peripheral Prospectors team. And I can assure you that there is not a bunch of hidden information and evaluation of you. It is probably a bunch of people struggling to, read 30 books at the same time that they're doing whatever else is going on. That's certainly the case for me. But I'm through about a little more than half of my allotment of our semifinalists. So that's been really fun to see other people's books and see what sorts of cool ideas people are coming up with.
So, and James, you are here.
Yes, finally.
Dispense right off the bat to everyone that they should know. We've already been told to write every day and wear clean underwear. Anything else to add?
So I do the second one of those, but I definitely don't write every day. Is this just advice about writing in general or about selling books?
We're just kind of killing a little bit of time, give Laura time to finish whatever she's doing and hop on. So, you can give us a recipe if you want.
All right. So, my bit of advice is to marry well. Find someone who has a creative streak and loves the life, but also has a secure job with health insurance. But
Yes, ditto on the wife with health insurance. That's very important.
yeah, I brought an octopus with me tonight. So my wife crochets, and so she does these octopuses, and she does dragons and other things. And so every one of her items she has to hand make, and they take hours for some of these things. But she does probably about 10 of my shows per year, and she sells crochet. And so for those 10 shows, I'm we have two different revenue streams coming in. We've got the book revenue, and we have the crochet revenue. And if I'm having an off day, she's sometimes knocking it out of the park. And there's days when she's can't give the stuff away, but everybody else is coming and handing me money. So it's nice having that partner that for a big chunk of my shows, automatically all the costs are halved because essentially she's bringing in income for half the table, and it's when I rent a hotel, both of us stay instead of just one person, and so it really is great if you have if you luck into a partner who can take part in the life and enjoy it as much as you do.
So we do have another person who's not officially on Bald&Balding, but he asks more questions than Ro and I do.
Sure.
So James, tell us about the Dragon Rider and the
Yes. So my first novel came out in 2003. I was traditionally published. It was a superhero novel called Nobody Gets the Girl. It was a big flop. Although it was a flop by the standards of its day, it only sold like 1,000 copies. Today, if I put out a book that sold 1,000 copies, I'd be like, oh, that was a pretty good book. To sell 1,000 copies in print. Anyway, but I thought my career was over, but that got me connections, and I wound up landing an agent. I'd already written a dragon novel called Bitterwood, and she pitched it to Solaris Books as Robin Hood with dragons, which is nothing at all like what the story is actually about. But it was enough for them to go, oh, we can put an archer and a dragon on the cover and people will buy that. And so, like 2 weeks after she did her pitch, we had an offer on the book. And so I went on to write 2 different series for Solaris. And I just finished up a 3rd series. So dragons are my bread and butter. They pay my mortgage. My newest release is an old release. That Bitterwood that sold, this is a giant illustrated omnibus hardcover that I saw for $100. It's got gorgeous artwork inside of it that just flipping through randomly, I'm never going to find one of the illustrated pages. But it's a very pretty book. It feels good in the hands. It will look impressive on it. Here's some of the interior art. So one of the advice I give for sales is make pretty books, make pretty stuff, and charge an appropriate price for it, because that's one of your big competitive advantages if you're an indie publisher. If you are self-publishing, if you had a mainstream publisher, you'd sit there and you would dream about them. Boy, wouldn't it be great if they released this beautiful hardcover edition with gilded edges and foil stamping. And if you're your own publisher, give yourself what you want. Give yourself a book that looks amazing. And so part of the reason that I've been able to carve out some little niche and have some revenue is that I try to make pretty covers, pay attention to my design of the interior pages, make sure that people, when they're reading it, it feels like a professional book, and probably a book they get from me. I want it to feel more literary, more elevated than a book that they're getting just from Tor or one of the other mainstream publishers, because I've been willing to put in the extra time to make sure that it's going to be a superior experience, which is not the case for all the indie authors that I encounter out on the con circuit.
So, Dave, how about you? Were you originally traditionally published, or you self-published the whole way, or what?
So I have a traditionally published children's book from a long time ago, and then I have queried 2 books of the 9 I've got out, and one of them I got some of the way towards an offer to do it, but it would have needed to be rewritten as YA, and the folks were really nice, but I didn't feel like I wanted to do that, and I figured I would try the self-published route with that one. And then one of my thrillers 3 or 4 years ago, I tried querying again, and got some nibbles, but not ever represented. But I go way back with sort of self-run and self-cratering as far as marketing stuff. I had a really successful shareware computer game back in the late 90s, early 2000s that I released. And then I was the sort of customer service and marketing guy and all of that for a few years. And then I signed on with a business partner. So my instincts are, and then I also published some puzzle card games, Dr. Esker's Notebook series. And those I did a Kickstarter just recently, but that was for the 3rd one. So like I've been printing stuff and selling it on my own for a while, and so it felt kind of natural to do that with the books too.
So for your books, where do you sell them most? Do you go to Comic-Cons? Do you do it online? Are you able to do Amazon ads and be successful? Because we'll all shut up and listen if you say yes.
I am not successful at Amazon ads, although I always have some of them running. I was really interested to hear what James is doing with the con sales, because I actually stood next to Roe for a couple days selling books at a convention in Roanoke last year. That was my first experience with that, and then I've gotten myself as an invited guest to congregate in Winston-Salem. So I'm starting to try to do that more. But I am very new to it, and I bought a table cover and bookmarks and business cards and all of that, and had a good time. But I haven't really figured out how to do the convention stuff. So, yeah, most of my sales, most of my downloads are from giveaways. So, like if I looked at my Amazon sales, I've moved 102,000 books, but only about 6,500 of those are paid copies. And then only probably 10% of those are paperbacks, mostly through Amazon. I've chosen to go with KDP Select, and so my books, most of them, there's one that's not, but most of them are in Kindle Unlimited. So that represents usually anywhere from 50 to 80% of my revenues are from Kindle Unlimited, which is, I think, a little unusual for folks, but not all that unusual. But that's maybe a higher rate than some people.
Are you writing in genres that are KU optimized?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing romance, which I think is the most popular genre there, and most popular genre overall. But I do sci-fi and fantasy, and my last sci-fi book was actually sort of bled over into military sci-fi. That's Kenai, and I think that subgenre does a lot better on Kindle Unlimited than than some other types of sci-fi.
Right.
So yeah. Hi, Laura.
So we have Laura here, and she was not invited only because
Hi,
the
guys.
night really great whenever she's on the show that we get so many viewers. That's not the only reason. She also has a lot of wisdom to dispense. So welcome to the show. It's like the 7th time this year, I think. I don't know, something 5 times this year you've been on the show, but
I think this is
Yeah.
my 5th time. It's great.
Oh,
It's the last
yeah.
to come here.
So I asked you on because you are leaning into progression fantasy series, like
Yeah.
not Vellum because that's going away.
So I'm doing a progression fantasy lit RPG is what I'm working on, and I'm actually in the middle of a mentorship on how to do a successful launch, and it's been interesting, the heavy hitters that are in there and everything. I don't want to interrupt too much because I know Dave was in the middle of talking, so I could continue on that later. Sorry.
Oh no, we were just sort of talking about different models. It sounds like James does a whole bunch of convention sales and in-person sales, and mine have mostly been online and mostly through Amazon. And so we're have those two different models. And
I'm very weird in that 80 to 90% of my revenue is print books.
That's incredible. That's great.
Yeah. But it's involves some heavy lifting. I bring in quite a few cases of books to the shows I do.
You get your workout in. You got to lift it up and everything.
Yeah. No, this is definitely something I wish I had really pursued when I was 40 versus now when I'm 60. It is after every show, my back is like, how many more years are you doing this here, James?
You got to get all those different wagons and tricks on how to lift it, get the back bracer, all of it.
I just invested in my 3rd wagon, so I keep upgrading wagons. There's I need smaller crates. I've got it to where I can pack up everything in these 4 very large crates, but the crates wind up being like 75 pounds each.
Wow.
And it's I need to find some crates that are half that size and more annoying to load and unload, but at least not kill my back whenever I'm picking them up out of the back of an SUV.
That's a lot. I don't know about you, Dave. I don't think for me paperbacks are only like 20% of my income, so you're completely inverted for me. So that's incredible to hear those kind of numbers.
Well, I used to. So I've been indie published since about 2009. Before that, I published about 10 books through traditional presses, but I got started early enough that Solaris didn't buy the ebook rights for Bitterwood because they didn't publish ebooks back in 2005. No one in 2005, or a lot of people in 2005, just didn't think ebooks were ever really going to take off. And so a couple of years later, they came back to me and were like, "Hey, we need you to sign this addendum to your contract so we can start releasing your paperback or your ebooks, and we're going to give you 12% royalties." And I'm like, "Is there an additional advance?" And they're like, "No," because I'd already earned out from the print advance. The book had already been through 4 printings, so it probably would have been a successful ebook with them. But Amazon, at about the same time they offered me 12%, was like, "You could publish with us for a 70% royalty." And I'm like, authors aren't great at math, but I think 70 is a bigger number than 12. And so I put out Bitterwood with a hideous homemade cover, just somewhere in my Twitter timeline I have it. That's what it was. But this was an era where you could slap up a horrible homemade cover and see so many downloads.
So that era actually still exists. This has been so fascinating to me in like the serial community. People click on ads when you make it in Paint, and you use your mouse to make a stick figure, they will click on that ad that you did, designed it yourself. These are like the most horrific ads. And yet they'll be like, yeah, I got a 2.5 CTR on it.
Well, this is the, I don't want to hijack us too far from the topic, but the first person I knew who cleared $100,000 in a year off of an ebook was traditionally published. He had signed for a trilogy. They put out 2 books. It was like, no one's buying this. We're just going to not put out the 3rd book, and we're going to revert your rights back. It was called. It was a book about Vikings. He took a photograph of a D&D miniature of a Viking and photoshopped that on front of a burning barn and used papyrus to write out the title of his book. And by the end of that year, had paid off all of his debt and was just doing just this overnight success. And he had done no marketing. You couldn't advertise back then. It was then entirely about also bought, and if you had a book in the right genre and readers were wanting it, you didn't have a ton of competition. I had some superhero books up, and they did really well at first because there was a time where if you typed superhero novels in on Amazon, you got your choice of about 15 ebooks, and mine were some of those. And so for the readers of that genre, they were reading through everything. Whenever I first signed up, Amazon was boasting, we have a catalog of 700,000 ebooks, which today is like probably what's published in a month.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds like once a month publishing now.
Yeah. So I did really well to the point that, by 2015, I was like, all right, I got to quit my day job. And of course, I made the decision to quit my day job just as that ebook boom was dying off and the flood of competitions was changing things because you lost the stickiness. There was a point when I started, if you got in like the top 10 of your genre, you could hang out there for like 6 months. And today you can do a promo and push yourself up into the top 10 of that genre. And if you stay there for 6 hours, you are blessed.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question for Dave and for Laura if she's still here, even though she has the spinning wheel of death.
She told me that her laptop died. So,
as the resident winner of all
first night for computers.
Yes. Did you see a boost in sales, and how big of a boost in sales did you see, if you did, for when you won the self-published science fiction competition and or the semifinalists for the Spiff Box this year? You had 2 books that did really, really well in competitions. Did you see those?
So I hit the semifinals in SPSFC with Daros, and it had just a wonderful year. And then I was the winner of 2 years later of SPSFC. And that book has done really well, but I don't know that it is because of the contest. I've had other things going on with that, like a BookBub featured deal that I think is responsible for a lot of its kind of legs this year. And then in Spoofbo, I've had 2 semifinalists. Woiling Lass a couple of years ago was one of my fantasy detective stories from the Inquisitors Guild. And that one, there was almost zero impact from being a semifinalist there. And this year, it was really nice to get semifinalist for Lady Isovar. But there was no surge of anything. It's had a normal year, but I think more of what I'm doing with giveaways and promos and advertising is what's driving it. I don't think semifinalist does much. The only exception for that maybe was Daros in the first year of SPSFC. But I don't know, because I'd never released another sci-fi book, and of course I was also doing other things in addition to being in SPSFC that year. With Kenai, I think it certainly has given the book. There was sort of a little burst when the winners were announced and when the semifinalists were announced. And I think in SPIFBO, that's even bigger. I think a lot of people wait until the finalists are around, and you see pictures of people buying all 10 of the finalists. And so I think there was a little bit of that with SPSFC, but it's a much smaller sort of community. And then when I was announced as the winner, I had a little bump, but not like a exponential spike or anything. But the book has had legs, and I've been able to put the badge on the cover, and so I think it is still helping and elevating. But if you ask me, like, what percentage of my sales are because of the contest win, I have no idea, but I would guess it's not.
So it's more slow and steady.
Yeah. But I think probably SPIFBO is different from that if you do get farther than I have gotten in there. But I can tell you with data assurance that semifinalist is not, you don't make bank off of being a semifinalist, because I've done that twice and neither time has it had a huge impact.
I got when Philippa Blake was like, hey, here's my semifinalist I'm reading. That's when I got a blip of sales. So his channel was definitely a help for me on that.
Yeah. Oh, there are definitely people whose attention you catch. Mm-hmm. But if you don't catch that attention, then the win or the placing or whatever doesn't necessarily do anything.
Yeah.
So I want to ask everyone's opinion on Twitter, Bookstagram, Blue Sky, whatever. Do you think any of those are effective at selling your book, or is it more just you want to connect with authors?
So for me so far, Blue Sky, no, it's just connecting with authors too much. You can find your readers out there, and it's not a bad place to find the ARC readers. The TikTok readers, yes. I actually had an easy time getting ARC readers there. I did a call out with a no account following, less than 100 people, and I got over 20 ARC readers from that, and I actually ended up getting 15 reviews just from that alone. So that actually really worked. I also did like cold messaging and everything, emailing people, and that was a different kind of thing. Again, Twitter and Blue Sky are kind of similar market, but I know people are saying Facebook is a huge place. I'm trying to dip my toe in that to figure it out. The Instagram, if you could do pretty pictures and keep your algorithm constantly going every day, posting, yes. I don't have the energy for that.
Yeah. On Twitter is weird. I have not had, every once in a while I'll do a post that goes somewhere on Twitter and gets some legs, but that's been very rare for me. And now with the huge exodus of people away from Twitter, the community's, a fraction of what it was. And, which is understandable given the politics. So yeah, I don't know that Twitter was ever worth the time I put into it. And I didn't put that much time into it. It's still, so it's like, and then Blue Sky I actually think is intriguing, but it doesn't have, it's much smaller and it's just new, and there are a whole bunch of people joining who are probably not going to stick around for very long. And so I don't think it's settled into connections. It also, the algorithm on Twitter focuses you on things that are very sort of managed, and on Blue Sky, there's not nearly the weight of an algorithm pushing things around, and so it's a little harder.
You have to set up your own follow. Yeah, it's actually really interesting on that, because I'm in a group, a rating serial group, the Discord called Immersive Inc., and all of us are part of that follow feed. So you just yes, I want to follow that. And now anytime any person from that community does post, I could do that. And then there's a reader one for lit RPGs that I do. And I can see that by just clicking a different tab.
Yeah, tab at the top. Yeah.
Which has been really nice in helping me learn. But the lit RPG one, though, lately has just been Dungeon Crawler Carl. That feed is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, James, how about you, who sells most of his books, physical copies at cons? Have any of the social media sites been useful?
I really wish that I had the time and inclination to really dive into them. I post on Twitter, but no one. I'm shouting into the void. If I get 50 people to look at a post and 6 likes, I'm like, wow, that's my top tweet of the week. And I've really just Facebook just got to be, anytime I would sign on, I would just see the six same people. It really just it was curating me, and I have to actively go searching for other stuff, and so it stopped being user friendly to me. And then I think 10 years ago I might have had the energy to dive onto TikTok, but at this point, when I know I know authors who do well with TikTok, I feel like I would need to devote a year of my life to learning it, and I've got better things to do with that year. That said, I partner with a author named Stuart Jaffe at a couple of my big shows, and I have been there when people walk up to him and are like, "Oh, I saw this book on TikTok," and so I do know that that the people who look at books on TikTok do encounter you in the real world. That author, Stuart, is also someone who does extremely well with Facebook ads. But his secret is, pardon me, he writes a mystery series, and he's got 18 books in that series. And he also he records all of his own audiobooks for that series. And so he basically is advertising the audiobooks. And you can toss a lot of money at the advertising for the first book. And if you find that, find enough readers who log on and like it and listen to all 18 books on audio,
That's a lot of money.
It completely makes advertising worth it. So my experience with Facebook advertising was I couldn't get enough follow through, so I would lose money advertising the first book, and then for some reason, probably everyone has this experience, but you don't get as many people to listen to the second book, and there's it drops off again by the third book, and none of my books extend over more than 4 books in a series, and so I think that it really works well if you are writing in a genre where you have a lot of books, and if you are doing your own audio so that you are getting the full royalties from it. I think that is a pretty good lucrative way that you can still make a decent revenue stream as an indie author without doing shows. He does shows, but that Facebook and audio are where he really lands big.
Yeah, with the Facebook ads, I am almost at the point where I am profitable on those, and it's been something that I've been trying on and off. And I would say I make back probably 90% of what I spend, 80 or 90% of what I spend on Facebook ads now, which was absolutely not the case early on when I only had a few books. Now I'm doing something wrong that everybody tells you not to do, which is I publish a lot of different genres under my same name, because I'm lazy and would get confused if I had multiple names.
I'm the same.
Yeah. And also, I might have some residual notoriety from Snood from a long time ago. So like at one point I had like a 4th-rate celebrity thing going. Which is long past, but anyway, I figured
there's gaming tracks and all these cons. I'm willing to bet you that
probably people who know that.
Yes, to a con just for your notoriety. there's retro gamers out there that
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there's
Yeah. But anyway, so with the Facebook ads, though, so for example, like I've had a couple of big BookBub featured deals, which for me are absolutely the best thing I do, and always make money on those. So if you can get one of those, I would say definitely do it. They're super expensive. They're super hard to get. But every single time I've done one, and it's been probably 5 or 6 now, whether it's US and the world or just non-US only, whether it's free or 99-cent sale, those have always made me money. So that is the one thing that has always worked. With the Facebook ads, they're starting to work better for me. And I kind of feel like, so like in July and August, my sales were slumping a little bit after I had a big BookBub deal earlier in the year. And so I thought, well, I'll try some Facebook ads again. And I juiced them up. My sales went from, I think, 72 paid sales in October to 256 in November. So that's huge for me in terms of numbers of sales. And then I stopped, and December's back down again. So like I can totally tell that the Facebook ads are doing a lot. It's just that they are costing more than the revenue they're bringing in. And so there's definitely a machine there that if you get it the right mix of stuff and you have the right mix of products, that works. Amazon ads, I've never had many of them be profitable. There are a couple. The one strategy that did work for me there, but was impossible to scale, was I signed on with a company that I think burned through its venture capital and is now dead. But what they would do is produce just lists of AdWords for you to try. And they would give you 1,000 AdWords, and they would say, bid on all of these, but bid small. And so, I did 10-cent ads on all of these words that they had sort of munged from everything they could think of with my book. And this was before AI, so I don't even know how they were doing it. And then I put that entire list of 1,000 words in an ad buy, and that was profitable. Like I would spend $1 and I would have $5 of return. So it was not like good profitable, but that actually worked. And so I think that's one way. I don't know if it still works, but if you try enough words and have a low bid, then whatever you get from that is going to be positive. And I've tried to replicate it and had a little bit of success, but it's really, really hard to scale. Like if you doubled the amount you wanted to spend, you're hardly ever winning any of the bid auctions because your bid is so low. And so it has to be kind of a weird word that few people search for that then you glom onto, that's also a match to what you're trying to advertise. And that's very, very hard. And I've done, some of the online courses and the promos and stuff. And even when I follow those, I don't get anywhere. So that's the only way I've ever gotten Amazon ads to work, was that weird sort of massive shotgun approach at very low bids.
Yeah, you get the 6 people that are. So I have a book about cryptids, and so if I list hundreds of obscure cryptids, the 6 people that are looking for the beast of Bald&Balding, I can win that ad, but there aren't going to be 12 people searching for it. There definitely not going to be 1,000 people looking for it. So
and my stuff isn't really niche enough for me to, at least for me to find things like that, that tie in.
Talking to a guy who writes dragons, there was a point.
Yeah, no, I know, and I think if I had one that was, a fairy tale retelling or something like that, where you have a smaller sort of topic to hone in on, I think that would really be a better potential than just like, I wrote a fantasy story, here, I'll buy all these fantasy word ads, and you never
dragon. If at one point, if you were letting Amazon set the price for the bid, you might pay like $7 per bid,
totally.
A $3.99 ebook.
The way you guys do ads is very different from the goal of the environment for serial writing. Because for serial writing, you're actually initially selling your product for free. Right. And there's like the back door of, hey, there's a Patreon kind of thing. That's where you make your money. But you'll put the main story out for free. And if people want to have a little free sample, then they'll go over to Patreon and pay you $5-10 for the next 10 chapters. Not a full book. They pay $10 for just 5-10 chapters more. Yeah. And it's incredible. Some people will pay $50 just to get like the book. And that's not K&P read-throughs or anything. And a lot of these, what they do for the click ads on that environment, one of them that made me laugh, he had a high click rate. It was literally a picture of an otter of give me scratchies here. That is the ad. Like, and it sold. It did great. People click on these. And it just shows you the different environment of the readers on Amazon versus like Facebook to even here. So I could not take that ad of click right here anywhere else. All of us have been trained, do not click ads like that. That is a trap, but that works. And it's like, you want to read a story about a guy who progresses to punch a giant. And that's the text. People click that. And they do these weird studies of like what ads work, what don't. 4-panel comics work on there. And maybe I should post some of these on like Instagram. Like, here's some fun ads that have arrived through here. And it's you pay a $50 ad to be on that site is what it is. And once you hit, I believe, 1 million views, then it's done. And you can pay to keep it going. But then you determine your click through from that. And again, these are people, they're not buying a product when they click it. They just want to read a story for free. But then you guide them from that free site to your Patreon generally, or to your Amazon, actually. And then they'll read Kindle Unlimited kind of stuff on there. But generally for serial writing, I'm trying to think of like keeping it YouTube safe, I guess. You give a slice cut, the clean cut version, and then you reduce it down with time to get them there. But yeah, people will pay to just add a little influence on the story. Like, I don't know if you guys know of the dungeon crawler Carl. The reason why people have been studying it a lot. On his Patreons, those loot boxes that the main characters got in the story were bidded on by the Patreon users. They would give these suggestions. So it's like, hey, you want to be in this Discord channel that can influence what loot boxes get out? Like Carl gets boxer short. Well, he started out with boxer shorts. He gets a toolbox was one of them, but there was like one time he got a cookbook. Ends up being an entire book actually is about this cookbook. That is a key part, and he pantsed off that idea. But yeah, you go look at his Patreon. He's pulling in, I want to say he's pulling in $19,000 a month just off his Patreon now. And there's, the smaller authors, they're like, yeah, you could aim for $500 to $1,000 a month just doing that approach. And it's not edited content. That's the part that gets me. I'm like, they're paying to be your beta readers, your line editors. They pay you? I mean, you have to make good enough content to entice them to buy it. But they're okay with it not being line edited.
So, Laura, do you think that's because this is just new and it's exciting, or are the people who are doing this, are they younger? If they're clicking on the, scratch me here, otter thing, are they, what is the...
Trying to study what the age group is, because Royal Road has exploded. That's where the main serial site on it is for Lit RPG. It's also tied in with Reddit a bit as another social platform, and Facebook. But there are younger readers. The high school boys are actually there, kind of thing, and because if you look at the bookstores, there's not that many books meant for the younger male generation right there. They kind of just vanish. The books that they're promoting are the romance YA books. And I mean, sometimes the male characters click what the guys click on, but sometimes they just want to read that fun martial arts fighting. Royal Road is free stories. They don't care. So they're over there reading. But the ones who are spending the money are the ones that's kind of the similar stories they like and grew up on. And we kind of were we've done some like polling in various locations. We've seen the average age about upper 20s to 35 is that kind of median range. So, yeah.
Male, female, or both?
Nor male. It's very heavily, I would say it's probably 85% male.
Because
that's very interesting.
That demographic does not buy a lot of books at Comic-Cons.
No, but look where they're spending their money is the thing. Like Sean Wilson, he's an author. I was saying, like, if you want to interview someone, watch him. He exploded last year. This year alone, he released now 9 books, published books on Kindle Unlimited. Last year, he had 2. So, like, huge jump. And he's putting these out. He's typing extremely fast. But yeah, his Patreon, I think, was $12,000 a month when I was looking at it. These people have figured out how to do it. And it's like you put out 30 chapters in your first month and they just buy it. You'll get $1,000 just from that, and by putting 30 of them out for free. So it's interesting. You got to type fast for these. Yeah. They are hungry readers. It's equivalent of like the romance genre to me in lit RPG progression. How just they devour books. They do love their audiobooks too, but like, yeah, publishers will reach out to the writers on there. Actually, they do the cold calling, which is it's such a reversed market. Because there will be people in the Discards going, "Hey, I got reached out by River Folk or Podium. Actually, is this legit?" And they're like, "Is the author's account named this number?" Because that's how that site is. Everyone kind of gets a number. Yep. And just so you're not querying to Podium, they find you. And it's just odd.
You started publishing yet, or are you still learning the ropes?
I am being told to wait until I have some inside information about what's happening next month. There's a competition going on, apparently, with some big authors. And they say do not release next month. And also a lot of new people are releasing on there because it's the new year. So they say wait till February or March. So you're not competing. Because the main goal is free. You have to be in the front. Right. Which by being in the front, you got to be in the top of the algorithm. Don't fight the heavy hitter authors. You're going to not have their following. I mean, these authors, they put out a book and they'll get within the first day about 1,000 to 2,000 followers. Just instant. Because they came in with 30,000. And those people, they buy the books. They go on the Patreon. They go to Kindle Unlimited. And they'll read through it again. Audiobook and everything. But yeah, no, I'm hoping to do February. I need to have book 2 going by then too. So I'll have 1 go out and then 2 right behind it.
And
that's probably something we should say, and that is fascinating what you're talking about. But it also works on other sites and with Kickstarters and that kind of thing. Because I've seen a lot of actually debut authors doing Kickstarters, and in most cases they are people who've built up an online following either in other ways or in parallel ways, and then like Adrian Gibson's Mushroom Blues. Really took off. It's in SPFBO as a finalist, and it's also in SPSFC. But it launched to a whole bunch of accolades because the author is a reviewer and a blogger personality.
Podcast. He does a podcast.
Sorry. And so having that kind of basis is a great platform to launch a book. I think Amber Toro did that in a slightly different way
with her Umbra.
Yeah, with her debut. And so that's an interesting way to, because for me, it's been like this marathon sprint from complete obscurity to, slightly less than complete obscurity. And other people launched to a whole bunch of reviews and attention and hubbub that they've earned in a totally different way than kind of the sort of, because they don't have another book that people have read or, it's all sort of in the moment and sort of buzz, which is great. I never tried that, but I know that people are having a good run with that kind of thing.
Yeah, Kickstarter and BackerKit are now becoming the big ones to do that, to launch a full book.
Yeah, I've only done one Kickstarter for an anthology, and I was very, very surprised at how how many just complete strangers were just, suddenly pledging $100, for a book that I was going to sell for $15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was happening. I set a goal that I thought, I'm not going to make that goal. And it wasn't even that, it wasn't ambitious. And it's like, yeah, no, okay.
You just wanted to cover some costs. Like, let's just cover the artist or the edit.
Exactly.
That's it. Something small.
So, yeah. If I can just go into this, I don't need to turn a profit. I just want to offset some of my costs. And
right, especially if you're trying to print those really nice hardcover editions. Kickstarter, that's what Kickstarter is for, right? Raising capital to do something.
That's true. Cool. Although I didn't, this I just paid for the out of my pocket. I didn't go through the Kickstarter. I know, again, I'm selling these for $100. I do events with other artists or other authors who have these $100 hardcovers, and I sit and I watch them, sell at show after show, 2 or 3 copies. If I wind up doing 25 shows next year and sell 50 books, I'll have paid for everything I paid up front for the art and for the cost of the product. So it's a long-term investment. I'm probably going to be 2 or 3 years out before it is like really returning the money I sank into it. But I keep name dropping Stuart Jaffe. He has this $100 omnibus hardcover, and I would just sit there. It's like a superpower. He and I will be, I'll be ahead of him, or we'll be tied on, the total revenue that we're bringing in ourselves. It's dragons versus detectives. They're both popular genres, and both of us are good salesmen, and so we're moving a lot of product. And then I'll look at Square, and suddenly he's up by $200, and it's because he sold 2 books. He sold 2 of those $100 books, and so I'm finally like, the reason I'm not selling the $100 hardcovers is because I haven't bothered to print them. So I need to get in that. But I will say that about everything that I published.
That's a chunk book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, this is. If you weren't here earlier. When I was introducing this, this is my $100 illustrated hardcover. It's 4 novels plus 2 short stories. It's got 16 illustrations, wraparound cover that's both case bound and wraparound, and it's. I'm hopefully will be driving up this weekend and getting a couple of cases of them signed by the artist, and so should be able to push the fact it's signed by both me and him for a while.
That's really cool.
But everything that I print now, I put into hardcover. So this is a short story collection, a freaking short story collection. I can barely give away short story collections on Amazon.
But in-person events.
In-person events, I've sold about 50 of this hardcover of this short story collection. Since I released it in February in hardcover, that's $25 a pop. That is a non-trivial amount of revenue coming in.
I'm going to be so excited when my hardcover comes out.
Do you mind me asking what kind of margin you use for the hardcover books? I know
so this is printed off of Amazon. I now mostly print most of my hardcovers off of Ingram, so these will probably be the last ones I do off of Amazon. But these cost me about $9 to print from KDP, and I sell them for $25. So $16 markup.
Yeah. Because when I was selling at the convention, I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured I didn't want to get prices that were shockingly high. But then I realized that I was making, especially when I did discounts for multiple books, that I was making like $4 or $5 a book, and in order to cover the cost of the convention, I would have had to bring in and sell hundreds of copies of stuff. So I was doing that wrong.
Yeah. So my most popular books are these paperback omnibuses. They're $30 each. They cost me $10 to print. So every time someone buys one, I'm pocketing a $20 bill. And Mike just did a convention with me in Pittsburgh where he watched me sell a lot of copies of this book, and the other omnibus for some reason was invisible at that show. That'll be when you do shows, you wind up with books that are hot at one show, and then they turn off and no one buys them at the next show. But I was selling this book. I was selling a lot of hardcover. I sold my very first $100 hardcover at that show, and that was the absolute worst I've ever done at that show. I only sold like 70 books over 3 days, but it was a snowstorm for the first day. The first day we were there, it was just dead, and so we kind of clawed back up on the second day. And whenever we were going to dinner that night, I said to him, this is just going to be a break-even show. If I made about 700 today. If I go in tomorrow and make half that, I've got 1,000, then at least I won't have lost money on the show. And then before we sat down, I was like, I'm being really negative in saying that tomorrow I want to make $300 because I've still got a $100 hardcover that a couple of people have looked at. No one's bought it yet. I still have I've got a bundle deal on my Dragon books in solo format where you can buy all 8 hardcovers for $150. And I'm like, someone could come up and buy those 8 books. So you gotta be prepared for people to give you money. and so sure enough, the next day got off to a very slow start, and we were like, well, I guess that was a dud. And then come around 1:00, suddenly just people started coming up and just buying everything we had. And I didn't sell the 8 hardcover bundle, but I sold 8 books to one customer, and then I sold the $100 hardcover. And I wound up doing as much on Sunday as I did on Saturday. So if I'd had a normal Friday, it would have still been a really good show.
Have you tried any of the really sort of premium conventions that are $1,600 for a vendor table or that kind of thing?
Yep, I'm in GalaxyCon Richmond and GalaxyCon Raleigh. I've been in GalaxyCon Columbus, but it conflicts with Steel City, and Steel City is the show that Mike did with me. And there's just Steel City is not as big of a show, but its expense to it has less expense, less hassle, and stunning crowds. So I've gotten really close to $4,000 at that show before. I'm paying $580, for my space. So that's a pretty good return on investment. And it's free parking, which is when you do the bigger shows, you're paying for parking. And the load in and load out couldn't be easier. It's just they open up the back of the building and it's free for all. There's no signing up for the loading dock or anything. You just grab your cart and avoid the forklifts and get out there. So anyway, yes, I do the big shows. I'm starting to get away from the smaller shows. The Roanoke show that you mentioned, Big Lick. I'm originally from Roanoke. I would love to keep doing it, but the reality is, I'm trying to get to shows where the crowds are 20,000, at a minimum. And those you pay up front, but those are where if you're going to sell 150 books in a weekend, you need that level of crowd.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I know we're going past time here.
I want to tell everybody we are coming up to about an hour, but we have 29 viewers and it's been steady high. So I'll keep going as long as people want to be here listening and talking. But if you've got to go, go. But
I thought it was at 8, so I'm good.
And then I noticed until like 5 minutes ago, I didn't realize I would see comments popping up, but I wouldn't see. I didn't know you could go back and read the comments. I finally have found a comment tab. So if there's anything in the comments you think we need to address.
I do want to share one thing that James actually told me at Pittsburgh that I thought was insightful. I learned a lot, and I won't tell you everything. But the one thing he told me is at your table, you would be very smart to have something for $2, to have your books for $15 and $25, and then to have something for $100 so that you're hitting everybody's price point. So whoever comes to that table, you have something in their price point. And because of that, I always give these swords away when people buy my books as a bookmark. These are now going to be $2, 3 for $5, 7 for 10. I'm going to actually sell these because these bring. I've had people like, if you would have led with I got a sword, I would have bought your book, 10 minutes ago. I'm not highlighting these. It just shows you how slow I am to learn. But I'm taking James at his, and if I ever complete a series, I will do a compendium. But I have to complete a series first.
This is a button that says "Friend of Jackalopes," so I wrote a book about cryptids because I design and sell buttons. So I have, when I've got the space, I've got a button board that takes up about 3 feet of table space. I've got 100 different designs, and cryptid buttons were hot. So I knew I would have a market if I wrote a cryptid book. I sold about 500 copies of that cryptid book in the first year. So it was, the buttons are kind of market research. But yes, so I don't do these every show, but for just a little $2 item, they cost me like 36 cents each to print. They're a lot of fun to design, and it's surprising how many customers I convert from button sales into book sales. I have a lot of Dragon and Fantasy buttons and D&D themed buttons, and I'm like, oh, you like D&D? You would love Dragon Apocalypse. And so, and the same is true of, I mentioned my wife's crochet, since she's crocheting the Fantasy Critters. I've got a book. She crochets octopuses, and so I've got a book that has an octopus on the cover. and you'd just be shocked at how many people come and they're like looking at crochet octopuses and see the book with the octopus on the cover and like, oh, what is this book about?
That's what you're doing.
Yeah. So one of the things I didn't mention this when we were talking about Facebook ads. One thing I tried recently was I commissioned a sort of, a better artist than I've used before to do an ad copy image. And that I wasn't sure whether I paid maybe $350, $400 for a really good scene with 2 characters from my book. And that ad had way more click-through than the other things I've done with book covers or that kind of thing. So just in terms of like small lessons that I am gradually learning, having a scene from your book as opposed to just the cover or, something that's mostly words, that seemed to be something that people on Facebook, at least, were a lot more likely to click on. And then, the army of septuagenarians who always clicks like on your ads, they also did too, but the click-throughs were better. I figured those must be sort of like machine-run hacked accounts or something, but that is one thing I've noticed with Facebook ads is that I just get likes from all of these people whose profile pictures are like, 70, 80-year-old men and women.
So Facebook irked me so much. It took me over 4 attempts to finally get accepted by them. They kept marking me as a bot account.
Oh, really?
The part that irks me so much, I misspelled my name on the final application accepted. And I was like, I give up. I am now the author named Dewey. I'm just going to change through the season of the Ducks. It's going to be Louie, Huey, and Dewey. I'm done.
The thing that I hated about Facebook ads, one reason I gave up, was they would tell me I had too much text, of my ad, and they were like, make sure you're emphasizing the pictures. And my ad would literally be, a book cover. It's got text on it, and they were like, "This is too much text for your ad," and so
that Dragon book gets marked as it's too low, it's too blurry. Every time I try to print stuff for it, when I have to do like an update on Amazon, it's like, hey, your cover's pretty blurry. You shouldn't do that. And I'm like, it's the style choice.
Yeah.
Every website should have an "I know what I'm doing" button that you can just click and then they quit harassing you.
Yeah.
So, Laura, I did not get your answer. I think you were busy with computer issues. When you were a semifinalist in Spiffbox, did you see an uptick in sales?
When Philip Chase talked about it, and also when
sorry, bad memory.
Yeah, and then also when Apple actually did declare me his semifinalists, I did see a small blip too. The Philip Chase one was bigger. When he did hit the group announcement, there was again a little echo sale, but at that point there'd been such a consistent that I don't know on that one. Yeah, Phil is awesome.
So I have found if Tim McKay is still on here, he had published on Twitter, and he's like, "Hey, I read Mike's book. It made me laugh out loud. I hate first person, but he's converted me." And I had 8 book sales that day. So I mean, he has 10,000 followers. So I mean, that's almost that. I mean, you gain something like that, but I mean, it's kind of like the rules of Twitter. You can't say "buy my book" because no one's going to pay attention. But if you get someone else to honestly say, "Hey, I read Laura's book and it's phenomenal," which is true, by the way. Everyone should have Laura's books. If they don't, you need to buy them. After the show's finally over, go buy all of her books. But yeah, you need to get other people to tell people about your book because Plus, I don't want to talk about my books. I don't like.
I'm the same. I'll talk about Mike's chapter 18 and grapes all the time. It's great. Yeah. And I'm with you. First person could be a challenge. And it's funny, the community I'm writing in for the serial, they're very iffy on first person. And I'm going to go for it. I know they're telling me to do third. And I'm like, it's too much telling that's happening. I'm not showing enough. I'm having too distant for the character. And then I switched to first. I've never written a story in first person. And the words, I went from like 10,000 words over a month, which is horrible, to now consistently 30,000 words. And wow. I want to get that up. There's a guy who was listening on one of the publishers, actually, for Shadow Light Press. Last month, he got all his words out for the year. For the second half of the year, he did 316,000 words.
Wow.
He dictates it, is what it is. And he's like, yeah, I try to aim for 10,000 at least a day.
Yeah. I can't go that fast. I have done, I think my maximum was about 8,000 in a day, but that was when there was a power outage. And
Were you typing or talking?
Typing, yeah.
Typing, okay.
I type fast. Yeah, but normally if I can do, 1,000 or 2,000 a day, I'm great. Sometimes with when I have done NaNoWriMo in the past, I'll do 2-a-day sessions and get up to 3,000 a day. But yeah, I just run out of ideas. And I think I spend the rest of my day kind of figuring out what's next. I'm a total pantser. That's part of it. I don't have an outline. So I kind of have to stop and figure out what's going to happen next.
My curse is that I know that I can crank out 10 or 12,000 words in a day, and that makes me lazy because I will be like, well, I didn't do anything this week, but next week I'll set aside a day and I'll just knock out 10,000 and I'll be back on track. And then,
that's sprint writing. Yeah, that's the burst writing kind of approach. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a burster. I can. I have several books that I sell where I wrote the first draft in a week. I just like every now and then I'm like, all right, I'm setting aside this week. I've got putting nothing else on the calendar, and I'm going to start drinking coffee and Kahlua early in the morning and keep going through the evenings. And my first draft is going to be messy, but it will be there. And I will tell you, first person. So most of my books are third person, but first person, I can just crank it out. It is amazing how much faster it is when you're in first person, because first person fixes pretty much all your point of view issues. It fixes most of your continuity issues.
Mm-hmm.
The character, if he forgets something, it's just like, well, people have bad memories. They're one of my books is, the narrator is like, well, I think I remember hearing this about this character, but I was drunk at the time, so maybe I'm wrong. And then I've established enough facts for the character, for the story to move forward. But if I later, 2 books later, change my mind, I'll be like, well, he was drunk. So yeah, I love the freedom of first person, but then there's an artifice in it that keeps you from writing at the kind of this elevated, polished level where it starts, sounding like, well, no one speaks that way. And so if you want to, you can, I really feel like for beautiful prose, you should go with the third person voice.
I feel like it depends on the kind of book you're writing, and if the intense experience with the narrator is what you're good at and what you think the book is going to be appealing for, then that's totally what you should do. And if you're trying to get loftier with descriptions and broader world elements and that kind of thing, then you can back off a little bit. But
yeah. Well, Dragon Apocalypse, I solved a lot of problems by doing a first person narration, but the narrator is a former monk. And so he's got this very elevated vocabulary, and he's also he's a drunk, and so he has this barroom storyteller, meandering style that will, lead him. Trump famously calls his style the weave, where he'll seem like he's off topic, but then he says, I'm weaving it all together. And so long before Trump ever entered politics, I was writing Stagger with his weave.
So I can tell you for my sci-fi book, I was like, I wanted to at least sound realistic, but I don't know that I have the chops to write hard science fiction. So I'm like, you know what? My protagonist is a 17-year-old kid, because then I only have to know what a 17-year-old would know. And then,
No, that's good.
Young and stupid. It's not because I'm old and stupid. It's because he's young and stupid. So
That is brilliant.
I don't know that you can go a whole career writing an entire, oeuvre with meatheads as your main character.
well, we're going to try. Either that or I'm going to have to get smarter.
You can definitely go very far in science fiction knowing very little about science. I used to be part of a critique group, and it was constantly critiquing, stories, and we're like, well, scientifically, you got this wrong, and you got that wrong. You plainly don't know what a neutrino is, and then 6 hours later, it's like, I just sold this story to. So, people.
I'm a geologist by training, and I was watching this Canadian show, The Coroner, and they find a body at the bottom of the well, and I'm like, there's only one way a body gets to the bottom of the well, because wells only have one opening, right?
Yeah.
But it turned out in the story that it flowed there through an aquifer, and I was like, that's not how aquifers work. Aquifers are pore space through which they're not body-shaped tubes that so I think, even if you're not doing sci-fi, you can have all sorts of things that And that's a risk as an author, is that you may think you know how something works and you don't. And yeah, that is rough.
That's why I write fantasy.
Yeah.
Fantasy
Don't need to.
No, Bitterwood, I got one of my first angry letters was from someone who was just complaining about the horses in it, that I hadn't done my research on the horses. And I hadn't, I basically, I'm using a horse as a motorcycle, and they're hopping on a horse and arriving someplace else, some arbitrary number of hours later. And they're like, no, it wouldn't, that would be dead,
Yeah.
I went to a convention once, and an author warned everyone, says, listen, if you're writing about horses, guns, or motorcycles, you better get it right, or else the crazy people are going to come out of the woodwork and tell you exactly what you got wrong when you said that 1974 Mitsubishi whatever motorcycle did this, and you're like, no, it was only 13 horsepower. No. Yeah, no. They said motorcycles, horses, and guns. Get it right or be vague.
Yep. Make it up. Make something completely brand new up. Yep.
Yes. This was not a typical horse. This was.
But then the most infuriating thing is when you put something in a book that you have triple checked, consulted an expert, had beta readers who know it, read it, and then some reviewer will say, oh, well, they clearly don't, understand aquifers or whatever it is, and you're like, no, that's right, you're wrong, but you can't, you can't actually say that. Or
that's like the Tiffany problem. That Tiffany was actually a very common name in the 1200s.
Right.
But I'd help you if you try to name one of your characters Tiffany in your fantasy, because they will come out of the woodwork and why did you give a modern name to this character? Because they know. It doesn't matter what the facts are.
There's people get mad at, like, if you use the name Luke, they're like, that's such an old name. And it's like, oh man, I'm outdated now.
If this author is listening, I apologize, but there was another author I know who named her main character Jared. And every time I was trying to read her book, I just kept thinking about the subway guy. And it was just, I just couldn't get out of my head. And I was just like, I couldn't get immersed in the book because I kept going, I kept thinking, is this an inside joke? Is this like, is she trying to tie it to the subway? It's such a famous, certain names just get so linked to one person that it becomes impossible. But then it turns out you can have blind spots. I put a sword into one of my recent books. I almost put it in that was going to be called The King Killer. And then someone else was like, there's this incredibly successful, top of the line, world famous fantasy series that's about a king killer. And I'm like, maybe I guess I was vaguely aware of it. I just like the alliteration. And it was a sword that was going to be used to kill a king. So, it seemed obvious to me. But fortunately, a beta reader, was like, I caught that. So it made it to a different name. But if I'd put it in, everybody would be like, why did he steal that name? But there's just, a limited number of words in the English language, and eventually they start repeating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I named a character in my last published thriller, and my friend who reads my books before I publish them was like, that's the name of a sitting U.S. senator, and I was like, oh no, I shouldn't do that. And then when I was reading, I read all 300 Spoofpo entries, like the first chapter of each one, as part of a stupid haiku.
I love that haiku thing. Do not call that stupid.
Well,
that
anyway,
was my highlight.
But like one of the books, the main character is named Matt LeBlanc. And I was like, oh, there was a cultural blind spot, or maybe a generational blind spot. But yeah, that was hilarious. And,
that was a great
could you
post.
be any more dead? It was.
I want to go around the horn and ask everybody, what advice would you give to the author who has their first and only book out and is going to conquer the world? And then what would you do to an author who has 5 books out and is, like, what am I supposed to do? Why do I not have more sales? This is supposed to go swimmingly and I'm supposed to be rich by now. So Dave, what would you tell the debut author?
I would say don't do what I did, which is have this first book out and be so proud of it and so excited to share it with everybody, and decide to buy a whole bunch of advertising that you don't know anything about. And you're just going to fail. You almost can't succeed with a first book that you've already put out. If you have time and you can build an author platform before releasing it, or you can do a Kickstarter or something like that to make the launch bigger, that's something you totally can do as a first-time debut author. But once the book is out, it's going to be very hard for you to find things to spend money on that are going to make it better. You can do all the legwork stuff. You can make TikToks. You can, trumpet it as much as people will listen to you. You can put it up for contests. That's been great for me. But you're not going to have success with advertising, I think, until you have a string of things that are going to give you a tail that make the advertising actually work. And so, some of my doing a little better with advertising now is because I'm smarter, but a lot of it is just because I have more products that people can buy. And that means your return on any given sale has the potential to be bigger. So yeah, don't blow your entire life savings on ads for your first book, because it's a learning experience. It probably won't be your best book. And you're going to be disappointed. Your money will produce sales, but you won't get that money back in sales unless you do it very differently than I did. So yeah, that's my.
James, how about you? One book. How are you going to conquer the world?
You'll probably lose money, but I would make sure you have a print edition of it. I would go anywhere that they will take it. If you know other authors who are doing cons, then go see if they'll let you have a space at the table and sell your book. If you set up a card table at a farmer's market, then go do that. There is no being able to look people in the eye and see who it is that gets excited by your book. The biggest problem I had in my early career was I thought I was writing for me, and I thought that people who would buy my books were basically of my background and of my education level. And once you get out and start interacting with the public, you discover, different books appeal to different audiences. There's different words that you will say to people who are at the table in front of you that produce, there's just, I use the word dark a lot. There's a lot of people who get really excited when you tell them that the book is dark. And so, learning how to pitch your book in person whenever you do go and are ready to spend money on advertising, you're going to be starting at knowing, here's what it is that people like about my books. I know that more women read this book than men. I know that, teenagers really love it, or I know that grandmothers really love it. And I've got a Wizard of Oz book that if I'm going to sell a book to a grandmother, it's going to be that Wizard of Oz book. So you just learn a lot about who reads books, why they're reading them, and gaining this knowledge. It's well worth any money that you're losing on the table. And with any luck, you can actually turn a profit on it.
Yeah. I will say I just did one a couple weeks ago with James, and I learned a lot just by watching him. My favorite, because he has 25 books and I'm not at all jealous, is what do you read? I have something for you. Come here. What's the call? It's, do you like to read? We like to write.
Yeah.
Start saying that.
I like to write.
I'm going to use that at every con I go to now. And I started with just one book on my table, and I had to work so hard to make sales. And it's just, I always told Ro, I always kind of hated him because somebody go, I want every book you have. And I'm like, well, I have 2. And then he'd go to Ro, I'm like, I want every book you have. He goes, I have 8. And he's like, that was a huge sale for me. I'm like, shut up. I don't want to hear it. But yes, so yeah, absolutely. Going to cons, you will learn. I thought my audience was teenage boys because that's when I started reading fantasy. So everyone must do that, and that's who I'm pitching to. And they have no interest or virtually no interest in my books. So now I know middle-aged women. That is the golden spot. So Laura, how about you? What is for someone with 1 book?
Try to find similar books. Start reading where they are. It's that way you can find where the market is before you even put it on for the serial sites, because each serial site is different massively on their markets. Like Scribble Hub is one site. You'll find some romance there, but it's not the best. They're more broad into a different kind of category stuff. Wattpad, they're heavy romance. Ream, another heavy romance, but you could also get a lot of science fiction, fantasy starting going on there. There's Psy Battles, know where that is. And then again, Royal Road's the heavy one right now. Know where those are. Start engaging and talk to those authors first as you're typing out your next book. Don't publish that first one. That was my mistake. Don't do that. Hold off. And reach out to those authors so you could get something. It's a free exchange called a shout out. And they put it in their author notes saying, hey, check out this story. It cost you nothing, but a message going, hey, can you shout out my story? Because they had similar readers, something you liked, and go and do it that way. And it's kind of similar to regular there, but it costs you nothing, and those readers will flock to your story because it's similar. And someone I know did 50 shout outs on their day 1, and they flew to the top. And I mean, they're starting to pull in money just from a free book, and it's so odd to me. So yeah, make connections. Don't publish right away. Hold off.
Yeah. And how important is social media? Do you need it to be a successful author?
On this site, yeah, because I'm gonna have to do. It's really more in the discords where for this one. There's like 6 heavy discords. There's also another one I'm trying to get into, but I have to succeed to get into that one. And it's those connections are just so huge and exchanging, and it's friendly banter. No one's like against each other. They really want to lift you up, and like you see that in the indie community, but there it's like, hey, I have 50,000 readers a day. You want me to shout you out? Heck yes, I want to see you stop working for a living and write for it. That's what they want to do. They want to share. And that mindset is so interesting to me.
James, how about you? Social media, important or not?
It's not terribly important for my my current career model. I think, and I say this as someone who used to actually, bring in very good money from ebooks. And then I think, having that online presence, being regularly engaged, having a newsletter really, really mattered. But once I shifted to the sell physical books strategy, Dave, you mentioned, the BookBub ads. And, I used to just live, for the months when BookBub would finally take my ad. I would get 30,000 downloads of the first book. It could count on, the follow-through sales. But, the ratio of free books to sold books, there's a point where I'm like, wow, if I average out, all my books, I'm making less per book than I did as a traditionally published author. And one reason I became indie was that, I wanted that 70% royalty instead of the pathetic, single digit royalties you would get in traditional publishing. And here, because I was giving away so much of my product or selling it at 99 cents, I was training my readers to pay as little as possible for my words. And so, they just wouldn't buy stuff at full price. They waited for me to break down and discount it. And so I really was just kind of like, all right, I need to really focus on this print I sell fewer books than ever, but I have more revenue than I ever had in any year whenever I was, selling tens of thousands of ebooks.
So, Dave, how about you? Social media? I mean, you semifinalists are better at every competition, so I'm sure that helps. But social media, yes, no, maybe.
So I think you can be a perfectly successful author without spending time on that, and the amount of time you spend on it is not going to equate to the return that you get. But I think it is a good way to be in. It's a great way to be in contact with other authors. I mean, I wouldn't know any of you without it. And it's a good way to get in contact with readers, but you have to work to build that audience. And that is hard to do. But for me, the goal of all of this is reaching readers as opposed to finding dollars. And so if you go to where people are and you do fun stuff that they react to, then I think you're doing really good marketing, even if it's not really identifiable as marketing. So like my silly thing with the haikus, that seemed to work. And Laura knows who I am, I think, because of that, probably.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
well, I also knew you from the science fiction. You became
okay.
semifinalist and everything, so I was following that. But
okay, yeah.
You got cemented in my mind with the haikus.
Well, yeah, and see, if you're not out there as a person doing stuff in the digital world, which is where most of us live a lot of now, you're not anything more than a name, and a name can be really powerful. Like I buy Nnedi Okorafor's books all the time, and I follow her on Blue Sky, but not really anywhere else. So you can build a reputation in different ways, but social media at least is a place where a lot of people are. And if you're doing something that's fun for you, that's not work, then that's a great opportunity to try to capitalize on it. And so I do the social media stuff that's fun for me, which is Facebook and some of Blue Sky Twitter and some of the Discord things, and then, my blog and posts and that. But I haven't gotten into TikTok, even though that might be good, because making videos is hard and I'm shy and, so I don't know. But yeah, I think
soon.
Sorry,
it might be ending soon, so
Oh yeah, that's true.
So I will say that I hate social media most of the time. I love Twitter. I love talking to other authors, but I'm like, it's a relatively small group of people who I'm can talk to my book about, and most of them are authors. Yeah, I got 6 of my own. Thanks. So it's great for making friendships, but I don't know that, I would use Twitter for sales. And I almost never post anything about my book. Hey, my book is about a stupid druid. I don't see the point. I will say, James, I'm getting to be more like you. And I just want to do physical sales because I don't want to I want to be a hermit. And so far, I'm a failed hermit. But I just want to say I was looking at my numbers for this year, and I've sold almost the same amount of hardbacks, paperbacks, ebooks, and audiobooks. And I don't know if that means I'm doing all of them or if I'm but they're all right around within 15 of each other for the year in sales. And so I'm very well distributed. Now, I wish the number was much higher, but and I don't.
The smart thing you're doing though is you are making them available in every format. It's kind of a very low hanging fruit to just exercise every format that you have the rights to do. So I do think that I used to have the majority of my income coming in from audio. That something changed in the algorithm, and it has fallen off steeply from my peak. But if you have if you're using print, audio, and ebook, then whatever, it seems like I can never get all three to be hot at the same time. But at the same time, I also never have all three just completely die off on me. So I was talking with Mike at one point about the authors who post zero dashboards, where they're like, it's the 5th of the month. Here's, I've made 0 sales on Amazon. Here's my zero dashboard. And it's like, I'd never really have a 0 day, because even on, if I have a day where I haven't sold a single, ebook, I can go look and it's like, oh, but I've sold an audiobook. And if ACX for some reason has a day where a day or two I haven't sold, I get to go check Spotify, and I've got downloads there. So distribute wide, every format you can, and it really it will kind of people. The more places for people can look for you, the more places they'll find you.
Yeah, the other thing I would say about social media is that it is also school for you to learn about how indie publishing works. And so it's, if you just sit there all the time posting, hey, try my book, it's got a great review or whatever, nobody's going to pay attention to you. But if you're out there reading what other authors are sharing about their process, or even if they're not sharing much, if hey, somebody out there is, they have 1,500 reviews on their book, I wonder what they're doing differently. And then that's a person that you can start to sort of research or follow and see if there are behaviors there that you can imitate or, steal, or if they're just in a different position. And there are a whole bunch of people who will straight up share, this is how much I made, this is what I tried, here's an ad strategy that worked, and so every moment you spend on social media can be a moment in the classroom, and every dollar you spend on advertising can be tuition to figure out how this actually works so that you spend your money better. I think there's a lot of knowledge out there too, as opposed to just marketing potential.
Yeah. I was going to say, if for anybody here, if someone contacted you and said, hey, I'm a new author, what should I do? Is there anyone who's going to tell them no that you know of in the author community? Is there anyone going to say, don't bother me? I mean, I've not met anyone who is not willing to at least, half-heartedly like, well, you really need, if you're going to Amazon ads and you really need to read up, here's a couple sites. I don't know how to do it, but good luck to you. And, here's a name or two to drop.
I've only met one person who was honest and said, I don't do that kind of stuff. I do wish you the best. Look in this direction.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling them out because I give them props for that, because they were being honest and forward with their own business.
No one just gives you the brush off. I've never been anywhere where anyone just like, no, you're too small. I'm not going to bother with you. I mean, I've never had someone heard of that. Yes.
That's why I've written a writing book. I'm about to write a second writing book, because one of the things that will happen to you at live events is everyone who has ever thought about writing a book will come up to you and want to talk to you for a half hour about how to write and sell books. And so I jokingly, came up with the idea to write this writing book as a form of self-defense, to just be able to chase people away from my table by saying, hey, give me $15. I've got a book here about this. But then it turned out that my joke book turned out to be actually probably one of the most brilliant things I've ever written. I've read a lot of writing books, coming up over the years, and I really, I feel like a lot of writing books are written very poorly. They're very dull reads, and I don't think anyone will be bored reading this book.
So, James, I want to ask you, not counting your writing book, has anyone come up to you like, I want to be an author, I want to learn from you? Have they ever bought anything from you, like any of your other books?
Yeah. No,
I just want your knowledge, and then I will leave. I'm not going to spend a penny on you, but I'll spend an hour talking to you so you can't sell to anyone else.
So you get those where they want to talk and they're just not going to buy anything, but then you get people every now and then who come up and they start talking to you, and then they realize, gosh, I've monopolized your time here for 45 minutes. What can I, this looks like, what's your top book? And I'll be like, well, there's this, and there's also this, and you might try that. And, I was in Hershey, and a guy walked away, buying like 9 books from me. And I was convinced, that he was just like, oh, he's not going to get anything from me. And then, yep, he put his money where his mouth was. And I saw him again at another show, and he was like, he had read those books, and he bought more of my stuff. So yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm a complete curmudgeon. I mean, I like talking about writing. I like actually giving people useful advice and encouraging people. I definitely believe in paying it forward. It's just, I'm at that show wanting to sell books, and I'm not there to teach a class. I'm, to a class of one. I'm there to move as much product as possible, and I need you to not be blocking my books as people walk past. So I can, it's the people who won't move aside after I've already gone on and I'm talking to someone else and actively putting books in their hands, and they're still there asking me questions. It's like, all right.
So, Dave and Laura, are you going to do more or some shows next year, or are you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to congregate, and then I'm looking into some others. I need to figure out what the right kind of show for me was.
Yeah, Dave, I'm going to message you about a show that I've got upcoming that you.
Okay, great, yeah.
Because you live in Greensboro, as told.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I'm just like 40 minutes away in Hillsboro.
Yeah, the show I did, and I have a sample size of 1, so I don't know anything. But the show I did was a lot of gamer-focused folks and comic-focused folks. And I think if I could get to one that was more reading-focused, I would have more success with the books. I sold $300 worth of stuff, 350, so it wasn't bad, but it was. I didn't make the table in my hotel room and the gas up, but it was a learning experience. Yeah. So I'd like to do more. I'm not a schmoozy kind of person. I actually am kind of socially awkward a lot of the time. So it's a thing that I'll need to build skills for and kind of get into more.
And Laura, I'll get to you, but just real quick, Dave, did you say you're from Greensboro? There he is, the dragon.
This is how I get past social awkwardness. I have a puppet.
Yeah, that would make it worse for me if I was wearing a puppet.
I think I'd be talking to the bucket.
Yeah.
I just go hello when people would walk by.
I will send there and flap, and people will smile, and I'd say, hey, you want a dragon fist bump? And they come over, they fist bump the dragon, and I tell them that they're now blessed by the dragon. If it turns out they're interested in dragons, I've got dragon books. I've got dragon buttons. My wife has crochet dragons. So puppets sell products. That is, if I know we've taken an hour and a half to reach this point, but if you're going to take away one thing from tonight, if you want to be a successful author, get yourself a freaking puppet.
Greensboro?
Yes, I've been in Greensboro since '97.
Okay, so I just got an email tonight from Big Lick Comic-Con. They are going to, for the first time ever, go to Greensboro, North Carolina, October 4th and 5th. Their tables are generally like $55, $60 for 2 days. Nice. So they said it's only for people who've gone to other Big Lick Comic-Cons now. They haven't released it to the public, but it is absolutely something you should probably look into. Big Lick for me, if I go, I'm going to sell $400. No matter if I go to the one in Northern Virginia or if I go to Roanoke, I always sell that no matter how many books I have. So, but if it's in Greensboro, your hometown, I mean, I would into that. And Laura, how about you? Are you going to do Comic-Cons? I know you're a job and kids and husband and,
I mean, I've applied, I've been rejected by a lot so far. So the answer is probably no at the rate I'm going.
So where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, Yeah. So you're in like a nice, dense population area. So there's got to be tons of events in that up there.
I'm really bad at looking them up. I look up for a few, and yeah, I also only have 3 books, so I'm not looking for like the big ones.
Okay. Well, you're close enough that if I ever get well, you're not on. I don't know how to contact you, but
Mike will tell you.
Yeah. Just have Mike tell me, because that's close to one of the big shows that I do, and I sometimes will need partners for it.
Oh yeah, feel free to reach out. It'll give me a break to get out of the basement house. I mean.
Yeah. But it will be work. The show days, frequently, like 10 hours on your feet,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, no, working on my feet all day is not a problem for me at all.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to share that I did not ask you? I did ask questions this time, so I'm pretty proud of myself. But anything else that, aspiring writers or established writers who aren't selling enough, which is, everyone, would want to know about selling books?
Just because you flopped your first one doesn't mean it's going to happen on your second. You don't know what's going to click. You don't know. Just keep trying, finding your keywords. And you could always change images, kind of like what Dave was talking about, this Facebook ad. Changing that out. He didn't change the book. He just changed the image. It's going to click with something suddenly.
James, parting words?
Yeah, you can't get fired at this. You can't write a book that's so bad that they're going to come and Amazon's going to send a squad of goons to your house to break up your keyboard with a sledgehammer. As terrible as your book could possibly be, they're going to let you write another book. And Ingram will print it up for you. You just keep going until you get it right. The one, I don't want to call it a mistake, but it's very easy when you're working on your first book to have tunnel vision on that first book. As soon as possible, stop thinking about the next book you're going to write and start thinking about what your catalog is going to look like at the end of 10 years. I constantly have a list of books that I've got in progress, coming out in even right now I'm planning books for 2027. So it's, you got to go into this with a long-term vision. And if you have a bad month, it's just part of the ebb and flow. The sales will come back. And then tiny, short, practical advice. If you do shows, buy yourself clear plastic bags. These are cheap on Amazon. And it turns every customer who buys your book into a walking advertisement as they walk around the show with your book in your clear bag.
And Dave, words of wisdom?
Well, I don't want to, I've already said a lot of stuff. I think for me, whenever I wonder, how could I be doing better, or how could I be reaching more people, or how could I be selling more books, or how could I be finding, more of an audience, I tell myself, my little mantra is, the answer is more books. And that is always something you can do, and it's something that you like to do. And so if you can't figure out what to do, then just sit down and write more. Mm-hmm. Because every book you put out is a spark that might land somewhere that's going to catch fire and actually, ignite all the rest of your stuff too. And that doesn't mean, don't look around and learn and try promotional things. But if you're writing, you're succeeding, at giving yourself more that people can fall in love with. So I think that's always the answer at some level is more books. I think that's what James said, certainly. Yeah, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, well, thank you all for an hour and 48 minutes. This is our all-time longest. Rose wasn't going to cut it off short, so we got to go longer. But anyway, thank you. It is time for the awkward wave, and then I will sign us out.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks.